The Holocaust, a time of unimaginable suffering under Nazi tyranny, is one of history's worst tragedies. While the Holocaust affected millions, the situation of women in Nazi concentration camps deserves our attention. Women who faced unspeakable horrors in the Nazi concentration camps were considered nothing and treated like beasts. The Holocaust was the most tragic experience imaginable for a woman. But if you know the story what really happened, then you can hardly believe it. Nazi ideology, as espoused by the National Socialist German Workers' Party, NSDAP, under the leadership of Adolf Hitler, was rooted in a complex amalgamation of racial supremacy, extreme nationalism, and authoritarianism. Central to this ideology was the belief in Aryan racial superiority, which held that the Aryan race was inherently superior to all others. This notion guided many of the policies enacted by the Nazi regime during its rule. Nazi ideology was deeply misogynistic and perpetuated discriminatory beliefs about the role and status of women. Women were considered biologically and intellectually inferior to men, and their worth was measured primarily in terms of their ability to fulfill specific functions within the family and society. Nazi policies restricted women's access to education and professional opportunities. The regime believed that educated and career-oriented women would detract from their primary responsibilities as wives and mothers. Educational options were limited, and women were actively discouraged from pursuing advanced degrees or careers. The Nazis idealized women as mothers of the nation and emphasized their role as homemakers and childbearers. This perspective was enshrined in various policies and propaganda campaigns that promoted the virtues of motherhood and domesticity. Women were expected to create a nurturing environment within the home and raise healthy, racially pure Aryan children. Women were viewed as crucial to the survival and expansion of the Aryan race. The Nazi regime enacted policies to encourage racially pure women to marry and have children. Motherhood was celebrated as a patriotic duty, with mothers of multiple children receiving medals and awards. The Nazi Party promoted the kinder, Küche, ideology, emphasizing that women's primary roles were to bear children, kinder, manage the household, Küche, and attend to religious and moral matters, Kirche. This doctrine was aimed at marginalizing women's involvement in the public sphere and reinforcing their subservience within the private realm. Nazi propaganda machinery was instrumental in shaping societal perceptions of women's roles. Posters, films, and other media depicted women in traditional roles, often surrounded by children and engaged in domestic activities. These images were intended to reinforce the idea that a woman's fulfillment could only be achieved through adherence to these prescribed roles. The Nazis implemented a program of forced sterilization as part of their broader eugenics agenda. This program aimed to eliminate individuals deemed unfit for reproduction based on criteria such as physical or mental disabilities, hereditary diseases, and perceived racial impurity. The law for the prevention of hereditarily diseased offspring, passed in 1933, provided a legal framework for the forced sterilization of those considered genetically undesirable. Women were disproportionately affected by the forced sterilization program. The Nazi regime believed that women played a critical role in perpetuating the Aryan race and therefore sought to control their reproductive capacities. Women who were considered unfit were subjected to coerced sterilization surgeries, often without their informed consent or understanding of the irreversible consequences. The forced sterilization program targeted a wide range of individuals, including those with disabilities, mental illnesses, epilepsy, and other perceived hereditary conditions. Many women were subjected to sterilization procedures against their will, as medical professionals were required to report cases that met the criteria outlined by the law. The program's implementation was widespread, resulting in the sterilization of thousands of individuals. The Nazis enacted marriage laws designed to promote racial purity. Individuals seeking to marry were required to undergo medical examinations to determine their genetic fitness. Marriages between Aryans and individuals deemed racially inferior were prohibited. The Lebensborn program was established to promote Aryan reproduction. Unmarried women of Aryan background were encouraged to have children with racially pure SS officers. The program provided support for these mothers and their children, furthering the regime's agenda of propagating the Aryan race. At the same time, the Nazi regime incentivized families with desirable traits to have multiple children. Mothers who bore several children were often celebrated and rewarded, as their contributions were seen as advancing the Aryan cause. Access to contraception and labor was restricted, especially for Aryan women. Abortion was permitted only in cases where it was deemed medically necessary or in cases of racially undesirable pregnancies. Forced sterilization and reproductive control were tools through which the Nazi regime sought to exert control over the population. By determining who could reproduce and under what circumstances, the regime aimed to shape the genetic makeup of the future German population according to their racial ideals. Women who were imprisoned in Nazi concentration camps faced unimaginable hardships. Conditions in concentration camps were characterized by severe overcrowding. Women were crammed into barracks with inadequate space and minimal sanitation facilities. Overcrowding led to the rapid spread of diseases and deplorable hygiene conditions. Women in concentration camps were subjected to grueling forced labor, often involving physically demanding tasks such as heavy lifting, digging, and carrying heavy loads. They were forced to work long hours under harsh conditions, leading to physical exhaustion and malnutrition. Food rations in the camps were meager and insufficient, leading to malnutrition and extreme hunger among the inmates. Women were also deprived of proper clothing, making them vulnerable to harsh weather conditions. Tragically, sexual violence and abuse were rampant in many concentration camps. Women were subjected to various forms of sexual exploitation and abuse. Female prisoners were often vulnerable to sexual assault by guards, camp administrators, and even fellow inmates. Rape and sexual violence were used as tools of intimidation and control. Under the Night and Fog Decree, women who were arrested for resistance activities were often sent to concentration camps without their families being informed of their whereabouts. This added an additional layer of fear and isolation to their experiences. In some camps, women were subjected to horrific medical experiments that included sexual mutilation, sterilization, and other forms of reproductive experimentation. These experiments caused immense physical and psychological suffering. The sexual violence and abuse inflicted upon women in concentration camps left deep psychological scars that lasted long after their liberation. Survivors often grappled with feelings of shame, guilt, and emotional distress due to the traumatic experiences they endured. For decades, many survivors remained silent about the sexual violence they experienced in concentration camps due to societal stigma and the painful memories associated with the trauma. This silence made it difficult for the world to fully comprehend the extent of the suffering endured by women during the Holocaust. By acknowledging the atrocities committed against women and the resilience they displayed, we honor their memory and those who survived. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to stay tuned for more fascinating content. We're here to feed your curiosity and ignite your passion for learning. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep expanding your horizons. Thanks for watching. See you next time.